I was literally sobbing as I was reading this book. Hey everybody, it's Eden. I hope you're doing great. Today's video is going to be a bit different. It's going to be more of a vlog style kind of video rather than a formal sit down video. Recently I uploaded videos that are very structured and formal, but last week for some reason I felt so stressed, and each day I felt like I'm running behind, which consequently made me feel even more stressed. Thankfully then my brain reminded me of the saying that sometimes the most productive thing that we can do is to take a break. So I decided to take a break and to pause for a week or two on the formal videos and film something that is more casual for you guys. I'm still going to talk about books, but I'm going to take you with me as I read and share my thoughts as I go along. A couple of weeks ago I shared about the final page challenge, a challenge that I set for myself to finish the books I started this year and for some reason pushed aside. So I already finished 3 books, and today my goal is to finish this one, If We Were Villains. I'm on page 334, so I'm going to finish it today and talk about the 4 books all together. And I don't know how long this vlog is going to be, but if we have time then perhaps I'll share the books that I hopefully will get to read next week. So yeah, I hope you'll enjoy this kind of video, that it won't be too boring or too messy, and let's do it. As on most days, I started my morning with a bit of reading, a bit of journaling, a bit of running, and getting ready before actually starting my reading day. If We Were Villains. I've seen this book all over social media. If you haven't seen it and don't know about it, then it's a dark academia novel about a group of drama students at an elite arts college who are obsessed with Shakespeare. The story takes us into their intense friendships and rivalries, and as in all of the dark academia books I've read, this blurred line between whatever they're studying, in this case Shakespeare, and their performances, and real life. In dark academia, at some point, of course, someone dies. So here too, a member of the group turns up dead, and the story starts with Oliver, the main character, who retells his story after serving 10 years for murder. Usually I'm not a big fan of this genre, but I really enjoyed reading this one, and I'll share more of my thoughts on it later in this video. A short coffee break. I put on this pullover because the weather has been so crazy. 1 minute you're melting by the heat, and a second later you're freezing to death. Anyway, so I thought while I'm drinking my coffee to talk with you about the books that I already finished. So the first one is The Silent Patient. I don't have a physical copy to share with you because my friend gave it to me and I already returned it. And just a random side note, I read it in Hebrew. Obviously I live in Ireland, so it's really hard to get my hands on Hebrew copies, but my friend was in Israel and she brought this book with her and she said I have to read it, and she was right. It's such a great book. You probably know all about it by now, but just in case you're not, then it's a psychological thriller if you're into those, and it's about Alicia, a famous painter who suddenly stops speaking after being accused of murdering her husband. If you're stuck with reading, then these kind of books are great for putting yourself back on track. Or if you're looking for a book to take with you on a flight or something, then this is also a great option because it's a page turner and you really can't stop reading it. Now, I don't want to give too much spoilers, but I have to say something about the ending. So if you haven't read the book, maybe skip a few seconds, and if you've read the book, let me know what you think about the ending. I'm curious to know if it's only me. But basically I wanted the author to explain what was going on in Alicia's mind and what made her do what she did. But instead the book turned out to be a sort of Agatha Christie style of books, like who is the real murderer in the story. So that was a bit disappointing for me. But all in all, it was a great read and I enjoyed it, and it makes you think about a lot of things. And it was nice to read in Hebrew again, because I forgot this feeling of how easy it feels to read a book in your own native language and how quickly you devour the book. The second book that I finished is Surrounded by Idiots, and I don't have a physical copy of this one as well because I gave it to my nail technician. I did my nails a few days ago. My nail technician, she's amazing. I love her, and we always have lots of discussions about the different personality types and how to communicate better and why people behave in a certain way and all of that. So I thought that she would really like reading this book, so I gave it to her, and I'm curious to know what she thinks of it. But basically this book is a sort of guide that explores different personality types and how they impact communication and behaviors. So Erickson breaks people down into 4 color-coded categories and shows how, by understanding each category and learning about these traits, how can we improve our communication skills, how can we interact better in a professional setting but also in our personal life as well. I liked it. It was very light and practical, funny at times. I liked the beginning, it really drew me in, but then at some point I felt like I'm losing my interest. I thought in a way it was all over the place and I could see myself in all of the different categories. I tried to think of people I know in my life, and I also thought I could position them in each of the different categories. But slowly, as you get through the book, the categories are more narrowed down and you start to see what he's talking about and to fully understand it and to position yourself and people you know in the different categories. And yes, so all in all, I think it's a great read. I think that some people should read it more than others, but it was still a very light read and a nice one. I see myself as green combined with a bit of blue. So yeah, I'm curious to know if you read it and what are your thoughts on it, and also if you see yourself in any of the categories and you want to share. You see, it's really warm again. Story of my life. So the last book I finished is The Four Winds by Christine Hanna. It's a historical novel set during the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. It's the first book I've ever read by this author. You know these books that make you cry and shed a few tears when you read them? I don't think I've ever cried reading as much as I cried when I read this one. I was literally sobbing as I was reading this book, and I think maybe that's one of the reasons why I put it aside for a few months, because it made me feel so emotional every single time I picked it up. It was such a great read. I learned a lot about the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl. I knew a bit about it, but this really takes you in, and her writing style is so captivating and engaging, and she lets you become the character that she writes about. It's really easy to sympathize with Elsa Martinelli, the main character in the book, and you feel as if you are her and you're going through whatever she goes through. And that's why you get so emotional, because her life is really difficult. So basically, Elsa Martinelli is a woman who's struggling to keep her family together as they face so much hardship during this time, and I highly recommend reading this. And now let's continue. After reading for a while, I cleaned and organized my surroundings a bit and went for a coffee break outside. I saw this caterpillar and I was mesmerized by it. I couldn't stop taking pictures of it. Walking outside, I'm telling you, especially when I'm feeling stressed or stuck, gives me so much energy and perspective and appreciation for this beautiful world we live in. So if you feel the same, then just go outside for a short walk and you'll see the immediate difference. I finished it. Wow, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this book. First of all, I'm happy to say that I finally found a dark academia book that I like. In dark academia, there's always a murder of some kind. And in all of the dark academia books that I've read till now, all the murder scene and the death and all of that, I could never believe that. But this was very convincing. Wow. I loved it. Her writing style is so engaging and descriptive, and each character is really developed, and it was brilliantly done, honestly. Because you have a window to what the characters are thinking and believing and their whole moral system, you can sympathize with them. It feels real and like something that could have happened to a group of people like the characters presented in the book. It's very believable and very convincing. So for the first time, I didn't mind the death and the murder and all of that usually I really hate in dark academia. Not to mention all the Shakespeare references that I adored. I took a Shakespeare class during my undergrad. It was a yearly course, and my professor, I remember her saying during our first class that the only way to love Shakespeare is to know his works by heart. We had many assignments that we were required to learn some scenes or sonnets by heart and to present it to class and all of that, and she was absolutely right. We fell in love with Shakespeare and we started to converse by quoting Shakespeare to each other. And I remember this course as one of my favorite classes that I took during this 4-year degree. I loved it so much that I wanted to do my master's in Shakespeare as well. And I remember looking for programs around the world because in Israel they don't have a master's in Shakespeare. And I found this program at King's College in London, and it was truly my dream to go and do my master's in Shakespeare and study there. And so I applied there. And obviously when you apply to a master's program, you have to write a statement of purpose. And I remember I wrote exactly that we conversed by quoting Shakespeare to each other. Unfortunately, I didn't get in, and I totally understand why. I had an interview with 2 professors and they were so kind to me, but I know that the knowledge level of Shakespeare and my English level was so low in comparison to others who applied. I'm sure of it. I remember when we had the interview, it was over Skype, and I was so nervous because I wanted it so badly. I really saw Shakespeare as part of my path in life, and I couldn't convey this, I guess. And they had so much patience for me, but I couldn't speak. My mind went blank. They asked me questions, but I replied with broken sentences that had no meaning. And I really felt like I'm stuck, and I couldn't find the words to express how passionate I am about this topic and how hard I will work to fill the gaps of knowledge that I had. So yeah, they didn't accept me, but I totally understand them. I was not ready. I don't think I'll ever be ready, but at that time for sure I wasn't. And I'm saying this because I just read the acknowledgements by the author, and she says, to my fellow MA students at King's College who vindicated my conviction that yes, some people really are obsessed enough to have entire conversations in Shakespearean quotations. And I thought to myself, that was me, and my goodness, how I wanted to continue with this and to learn more about Shakespeare in a more professional way, because obviously I didn't stop reading Shakespeare, but it's not the same as, you know, studying it in class and learning about it. And yeah, so I finished it. I loved it. Finally, Dark Academia book. It moved something inside of me, and I feel like I just had a shower of nostalgia. And it's nice to think about it and remember those times. And I highly recommend, if you're into Shakespeare, if you're into Dark Academia, I loved it. I actually feel like I want to read it all over again now. I made myself some pasta salad. This is one of my go-to meals whenever I don't feel like cooking, which happens a lot lately, and I really need to stop eating pasta. But here it is, super quick and easy to make. The weather shifted again. Well, that's Ireland for you. We have 4 seasons in one day. Here I was going over my notes and highlights and adding the tabs accordingly. If you want to see a full video on how I annotate my books, I'll add it here on the screen somewhere, and I'll link it down below as well. Then I transferred some of my thoughts to the dedicated page I have on my Notion, and then it was time for a real break. And this is one of my favorite things to do at the moment when I want to have an actual break, and is to just play with color a little bit while I'm listening to an audiobook or a podcast or just some music in the background. So I'll end this reading vlog here. Let me know what you think about the books I mentioned, if you've read them or if you're planning on reading them. And if you feel like it, let me know what your thoughts are about this casual style of video. I'd love to know your opinion. Thank you so much for spending the day with me, and I hope you have a beautiful day like these beautiful colors. See you next time. Bye bye.